Hey everybody, this is Patrick from the Poison Pen Bookstore in Scottsdale, Arizona. And I'm sorry about this weird echo I'm getting, everybody. I'm not sure where that's coming from, but I guess it'll just be part of my mystique tonight. But it's a real pleasure and an honor to welcome my friend David Swinson to the program tonight. And we're going to be discussing his brand new book, City on the Edge, which is just a remarkable book. And David was kind enough to sign a whole bunch of them for us. And so if I can figure out how to do it, I'll put a link in the comments field if you'd like to order a signed copy. We still have some left. And it seems like this echo is getting worse. But you can still hear me, Dave?
Yeah, I hear you perfectly.
All right. Well, sorry, everybody. I'll try to figure out what's going on. But anyway, David, welcome. It's great to see you.
Thank you.
I know you've been out there doing a whole bunch of these over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, I wish it was live.
It's just a sign of the times, isn't it?
Yeah.
What a weird ass year it's been.
Yeah, a little tough, but
yeah,
we're gonna get through it. Not gonna be the same, that's for sure.
Now you're in DC, right?
Well, yeah, I'm outside DC right now, but I used to live inside DC.
Everything's starting to open up where you are?
They are opened up. I mean, yeah, there's, bars and restaurants open till 2 a.m. now.
Oh, good.
And they're a little bit more lenient on the masks.
That's cool. Yeah, it's starting to really turn around here in Arizona. Hard to believe. Arizona's usually behind the times, but we seem to have gotten our act together with this vaccine. So that's great. I'm getting a comment. You should use earplugs. Probably right. Yeah, this is odd. But anyway, bear with me. There's so much to talk about. David and I have been sort of email buddies for a while, and we've never really had a formal interview program like this. So I'm really looking forward to chatting with you. Let's see here. We'll talk about the Frank Marr books, which are just amazing. And but in particular, let's just jump right in and talk about this new book, City on the Edge. And it's a lot of things. It's a crime novel, but what it really struck me as was a great coming of age sort of story about a boy in a warlike environment or a very volatile place. Becoming a man, over a short period of time. Can you talk a little bit about what inspired the book?
Book's been in me since I grew up. Well, I spent 4 years in Beirut around the same time period because my father was foreign service. So there's that element that's sort of a semi autobiographical. It's totally fiction, but it's a book I've always wanted to write since my 20s. And the versions that came out of me during that time period were pretty terrible. And after the trilogy, Frank Marr, it just felt like the right time. And fortunately, my editor, Josh Kendall, really liked the idea, and he said, go for it.
And so just to catch everybody up, the scene is early 70s, right as the Civil War essentially in Beirut is kind of looming. The Vietnam War is kind of ending or coming to a close. And so this family moves to Beirut in the middle of this, right? 1972.
Yeah, 72. Well, I was there from 70 to 7. We were evacuated in 74, 75. So yeah, this takes place primarily 72, and the father is government.
And you were you a little bit younger than that, maybe?
I was younger, yeah. I wanted 12 years old because I forgot to put in a major influence was The Body by Stephen King, which many know is Stand By Me, the movie.
Sure. Oh, okay. Yeah.
So the way he built the suspense to those kids at that age group going to see a dead body and all that happened during that time, going to see it, especially the railroad track scene and stuff like that. And, so I I was very influenced by that.
Well, what you do such a great job of showing is just the incredible natural beauty of the environment.
Mm.
Can you talk just a little bit about what it was like? I mean, it was almost like a, it read like a Huckleberry Finn, in the Mediterranean kind of vibe. I mean, the kids just had the run of the place, and what a place for adventures. And
No, it's not like that now. It's still safe. Pre-trouble, I mean, it was a teenage kids paradise, a kids in general paradise. I mean, we, we did run around in our shorts and sandals, shirtless, and we lived behind near the Corniche, which was the avenue that stretched along the seawall, and the Riviera Hotel, and there was a tunnel that we would take underneath the Riviera Hotel to the seaside pool. And then we jumped that little wall to go to the reefs and go reef hopping, and just also going uptown, for shawarmas, for Lebanese food, and we weren't accompanied by parents or anything. We were just totally free. There was no danger of being kidnapped, and or anything like that in our head, or our parents' head, for that matter. My dad was government, and he knew what I was doing. Not during the curfews. During the curfews, I was sneaking out and doing things I shouldn't be doing. It was actually dangerous to do that, because there were snipers. There were a lot of bad things going on. So I don't want to make light of that.
no, we'll definitely get into that. I wanted to ask you a little bit, but before I get ahead of myself, I really like the point of view of the book, the way you chose to tell the story. It's obviously told from a man looking back, and you see somewhere in the book fairly early on, he says, at that point, I knew I wanted to be a cop, and it's interesting. Obviously, some of the basic biographical elements line up with you. Can you make that same claim? Did the experience of having a father in the Foreign Service and the State Department and all these experiences, did that plant the seed in your mind that you wanted to be a cop early on?
Yeah, not quite that early on. I mean, more when I was 17, 18 years old. I really wanted to get into some form of law enforcement. I did not want to be a Fed, because I was tired of, being lifted up every 3-4 years and having to move, and in a federal job, especially Foreign Service or FBI or some DEA or whatever, you get moved around every 3-4 years. And DC was always home base between countries, and I always dreamed of being a cop in Washington DC. In particular, I remember this scene when I was like 17 and just driving by this area where Special Operations Division used to be. It's not there anymore. And seeing these cops out there, smoking cigarettes and looking really just like they were getting ready to do a job, and that just really hit me. And just, how it seemed like another grand adventure at that time. But joining it was an adventure, but it wasn't, at all like I thought it would be. But it was great. It was an incredible experience. I didn't expect to stay for as long as I stayed, and that time went by so fast. But I always wanted to be two things. I always wanted to be a writer, and I knew I would be a writer, and I wanted to be a cop. But I took a different path in life, as you know. I mean, I got into the whole scene in California after college, everything.
Yeah, we'll get into all that good stuff. The relationship, just for everybody watching, the basic perspective is told from the 12-year-old, 13-year-old boy named Graham Sanderson, right? And
Yeah.
And as I say, his family his father takes an assignment in Beirut, following, and I'm not going to give away any real spoilers here, but you find this out in the very beginning of the book. the family's kind of disintegrating in some ways following the death of Graham's sister. And the family dynamic, you can see their marriage starting to fall apart. Can you talk just a little bit about the family and kind of set it up?
Well, I always knew that that was going to be a part of the story. A lot of what I write is based on experience. I don't do, I do, of course, have to do certain research. But my family went through a divorce when I was around 14, and stuff like that. And that's always stuck with me. And I've always wanted to write. My sister didn't die. She's still alive and well in St. Louis, and 2 sisters. But I always knew I wanted to write about that experience, about, a kid, growing up where around him there, the family was, falling apart. And it was just as much like on edge as the city.
Yeah. And he's got these, in the book, he has these several friends, Lenny and
Bill.
Yeah, thank you.
Which is a real name, a real guy that's still around. He's a very good
right?
manager. Yeah, he used to manage Hunter S. Thompson.
I'll be darned.
Like that. Yeah, that's how we met in the 80s. So I always knew that I would put Bill Stanky in a book.
Well, then you got Roddy.
But, yeah, we weren't. Yeah, Bill, Roddy, Stanky, but we weren't friends in the 70s in Beirut.
That's a little nod to him, though.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. But these kids, these American, kids in the embassy sort of environment, as you were saying earlier, until the real conflict and the violence really starts to build, and I love the way you present it, because it's growing in the sidelines, or off in the margins, and all of a sudden it takes over the story, and you really see it through his perspective. Mm-hmm. But these kids, hanging out together, and the importance of listening to music, American records and all of that at the time. I'm sure that probably mirrors your own experience.
Oh, most definitely, man. I mean, my music tastes have changed so much from the 70s, I mean, Velvet Underground, specifically Jethro Tull. That was the first album I think I ever bought for myself. I mean, I had 45s, and I'm not too ashamed to admit that, like, my 45s were like the Archies, and pre-13, even before, sure. Like when I was 9 years old or whatever. But yeah, Jethro Tull Aqualung was one of the first albums I ever bought. So yeah, he's very, very, very big in the book. I mean, not he, the band. Yeah, resonate in the book. Because I used to, as a kid, I used to listen to that album, not only Aqualung, but Thick as a Brick, over and over and over again.
Well, it's funny because the father is kind of a cool character. He's listening to the Velvets. He's listening to Can.
Can too. Yeah, Can from Germany. Yeah. Yeah.
It's funny because I don't want to bore the viewers with all this stuff too much, but I've recently really got into a lot of that German stuff from the late 60s, and the Amandul, and Neu, of course, and seeing a lot of that. You can really see a certain strain where punk rock
was influenced.
Yeah, but especially Neu. You really hear Wire and Gang of Four and all that stuff directly coming out of that.
Yeah, and Can, you hear like Talking Heads, you hear a lot of that stuff.
Right. But and then of course you have Micheline, which I was waiting for something to happen in the book, which alas.
Every kid has one.
Every kid has one. Was there a Micheline in your experience?
Oh yeah. We grew up with nannies, and they were more than nannies. They were family members. They but mine was in Mexico City.
I see.
Raquel.
Raquel.
You can just imagine. Okay. And I was I was 8 years old or something like that. And yeah, I mean,
Wow.
you know, but yeah, I had such a crush on her. Yeah.
Well, tell us a little bit about, I mean, just a little bit about the plot of the book. We've described the setting. You know, it opens with our kid, you know, witnessing real up close and personal somebody get killed. And again, I don't want to give too many spoilers, but there is an actual, you know, murder mystery plot going in the background, as well as a lot of espionage and lots of different elements are in the book.
Yeah, it's just basically about you know, through a kid's naive eyes, you know, and you know they're afraid to tell their parents. You know, obviously he's terrified to tell his parents because he broke curfew. And again, I don't want to give away too much, but I mean, I always had this idea that they're not like sleuths. They pretend to be spies, and you know, and then this happens, and they pretend in the back of their mind to be, you know, like you know, kids who want to solve the murder, but you know, in real life, they're not going to solve the murder, you know. But it's about, you know, just going back to the body, and then how to bring it up to they know they have to tell their parents, you know, because it's something major. And then I always wanted the mystery to sort of carry it. But then there's all these elements, you know, like with the father. I mean, as a kid, did you grow up like spying on your parents and listening to their conversations?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
And
was a
so,
total
yeah,
voyeur.
so that's how the espionage stuff comes up, and also a couple of scenes where he witnesses certain things. But there was always that mystery, you know, the murder, which sort of lurks, you know, dangerously, you know, I hope, in the background.
Well, and also, you know, a big element of the book, and we'll talk about this a little bit, is that, you know, the kid very early on starts having suspicions about what his father's real role is, you know, in the story. You know, he's a foreign service, you know, worker, and what does that really mean, you know? And he
Yeah.
starts to think early on that his father's a spy, you know,
Or the CIA,
or
that,
the
you know, just
CIA.
or an not operative, but I forget what they call them. I always thought that, you know, to this day I think that, but I think it ended up being DIA,
Is that right?
Defense Intelligence Agency. Yeah, that's what I think, and I think it sort of was slipped. So that there are elements that are real, but again, I want to stress it. It's total. The family is totally fiction. The story is totally fiction.
Yeah.
You know, the friends are totally fiction. You know, and what is not fiction is you know, certain elements that actually happened in my life. I mean, I was there during the turbulence. I did observe the planes bombing Palestinian, PLO camps, and you know, the Christians, you know, fighting the Muslims, and you know, the sounds of, you know, pop, 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 pop in the background, and sleeping on the floor during the curfew with the curtains closed, you know, and no school. But what's important to mention is that, you know, as a kid, it's a grand adventure. I mean, you're in this trouble zone, you're in this war, you know, and you're building little tents by your bed and sleeping on the floor, and it's just an incredible adventure sneaking out. But now looking back, you know, as an adult, you know, it's terrible. You know, I mean, there was death behind all those plumes, and
Right.
you know, and all those pops. You know, someone was dying. You know, and this also took place around the time, you know, the whole Munich Olympic thing happened,
Yeah.
and then the retaliation. You know, we were there, and we heard that we heard, and my father, you know, that's what was interesting, is my father knew that was coming, and we had to sleep on the floor again. And then indeed it did come, and we were close to Alhambra, and a major part where PLO people were shot by the Israelis in retaliation. Now, this I don't claim this to be historical. This is all you know, the one thing that I did research was a timeline. So I wanted to get the timeline correct. I didn't want to fudge that. But I don't claim this to be a historical piece at all, you know, because things I put in here, I mean, I did see, but I don't say that was the Mossad, you know, or anything like that. I mean, I think as a kid, yeah, that's the Mossad, you know,
Sure.
but it very well may not have been, you know.
Now, at some point, I imagine they would have evacuated all those families. Did you get evacuated as well?
Oh yeah, very much. Yeah, my father actually was in charge of the American evacuation of all the American members in the embassies. There were Saudi families. I mean, oil, like Americans in oil and in corporate life, Americans. A lot of those people, you know, they went off on their own or stayed. A lot of Americans did stay until, you know, the 80s, you know. But yeah, we were evacuated much in the same way.
Is that right?
By car, yeah.
Wow.
To Tyre, and then I don't quite remember how after that.
Was that exciting as a kid, or were you scared shitless?
I was pretty scared because, you know, I was leaving so fast. I was leaving good friends behind, and I was leaving a girlfriend behind. my first girlfriend. Oh yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and
was she Lebanese?
No, she wasn't. I had Lebanese friends, but no, she was a part of the American school. Oh, the Lebanese women, you know, that's a whole nother story. That, you know, sneaking, or you know, when the pool was open, going down to the saltwater pool, and you know, it's funny. You had the women that were in their full garb and, you know, stuff like that. But then you had, you know, very westernized women, you know, that, you know, were topless and, you know, wearing, you know, like
rubbing the oil on their body.
Oh, yeah. It was for a little kid, man, who, you know, all we ever did was kiss and hold hands. You know, I mean, that, you know, seeing that was just like, you know, a little kid's dream.
Wow, especially in the early to mid 70s.
70s when, yeah, they were getting into the hot pants and, you know, all that kind of stuff.
Counterculture and everything.
Yeah, no, very much the counterculture, you know. I mean, music there was pretty cool. I mean, there was a really good, I mean, there was a record store I remember, and that's where I got like Aqualung, and they had a lot of American records and, you know, a lot of German records. Wow. You know, Scandinavian records, you know, ABBA was very popular.
Right. Well, it's interesting in the book. I wanted to ask you, and again, we don't want to say so much that people don't want to read the book, because I mean, it's a very rich reading experience. I've read it a couple times now, and new things keep popping out at me. But it seems like early on when the boy, you know, as I said earlier, he suspects more is going on with his father, and he checks his satchel and a gun comes out, you know, very pivotal scene in the early part of the book. And, you know, the father ultimately teaches the son, you know, how to fire his weapon. Were some of those little subtle details about did you have a similar relationship with your dad? Did he teach you how to shoot a gun?
Yeah, I broke into his trunk when I was about 17. That was after the divorce. I was with my mother, but then I was real troubled and bad kid. And my dad came and got me, brought me back to Washington, D.C., where I went to high school. And he had this trunk. That trunk just called to me. I mean, it was a locked trunk, you know. So I go through the back with a screwdriver, you know, the hinges, and managed to get in. And man, he had weaponry in there. And I remember taking out a 38 police special, and then the shoulder holster it had, and I would put it in there. I didn't know to check it. I didn't know anything, but he caught me, you know. And at that point, you know, there weren't really any ranges, but we went to the mountains, and this was in Washington, D.C. No mountains in Washington, D.C., but outside of D.C. And he taught me how to shoot, and that thing kicked me on my ass. I mean, literally. And then, but he gave me a 45, his 45 service weapon, you know, Korean War. And he knew how to teach me. He, you know, and I realized the power behind a weapon like that. And so I always respected it. I never again did that.
Yeah. I suspected some of those very intimate details were probably, autobiographical.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
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 Well, let's just take a quick break and talk about, we'll get back to the book, but I want to talk about the circuitous route your career has taken. So you grew up obviously kind of a nomadic existence, living in various places, but home base was always DC, right?
Yeah.
That was the constant. And then you went to school out in Los Angeles, is that right?
Yeah, California State University, Long Beach, film.
Okay. And so I was trying to figure out how you went from DC to LA to Long Beach. And then you ended up, promoting punk rock. You were there at a perfect time.
Yeah.
So Long Beach, you must have known all the guys from TSOL and.
Well, eventually, yeah, I met them. They saved my life. It's another story, but they saved my butt in a major fight, after a show where these football players from Cal State came and they just surrounded me and started kicking the crap out of me. And next thing I know is I'm on the ground, I'm just protecting my head. And I look through my peripheral and I see these Doc Martens come up between some guy's legs. TSOL was big. They were big guys.
Jack's a big old dude.
They kicked those football players' arses, but they just, they saved my butt. But no, after my degree originally was journalism, then I changed it quickly to radio, television, film, because I always thought I wanted to be a screenwriter.
Yeah.
And when I got out of college, I fell into a wonderfully bad relationship with a girl who got me involved in the punk alternative scene in Long Beach, specifically Seal Beach. And we eventually, their relationship got established. We eventually opened a record store on Main Street in Seal Beach, and
really?
that specialized in alternative music and and punk rock. And it attracted such a crowd of kids that had nowhere to go. They had absolutely nowhere to go because you had Orange County, which we called the Orange Curtain, and then you had Hollywood. And they didn't have cars to go see shows like the Cuckoo's Nest or,
was the Starwood still around at that time?
Yeah, it's Starwood. And I think, I don't want to, maybe someone who's listening will know. But so we ended up finding a location called Fender's Ballroom, which held 1,500 people. And it was a low ceilinged mess with a big stage. And I think the first show, believe it or not, I think the first show we ever did was The Violent Femmes.
Okay.
And it was, you can't believe how crazy The Violent Femmes, what kind of crazy crowd they attract. But I think it's because it was all ages and most of those kids just had nowhere to go and they went nuts. They tore the Fenders apart and, it was a huge mosh pit for Violent Femmes.
Wow.
And then after that, bands like Social Distortion, TSOL, Aggression, Butthole Surfers. Everyone played there. No Doubt had one of their first shows there.
Who I always liked is 45 Grave.
Oh, 45 Grave several times. They became friends.
They were, and we can just nerd out and bore people for a second, but that guitar player that they had, Paul Cutler, I think it was incredibly underrated. I mean, what a musician.
Yeah, and her too. I forget her name, but yeah, he was great. That was a great band. We used to do a lot of shows with 45 Grave.
Is that right?
And back then also it would be like 5 bands for $5, So, I mean, you can imagine the amount of people that came. Then word got around and then other promoters got involved, and then I sort of migrated to this meat club type place, top 40 place called Bogart's Nightclub. It held about 450. I said, give me one night, just Sunday. And that Sunday was making more than their Fridays, Saturdays combined. And so they gave me all nights. And I mean, everyone from Nick Cave to Guns N' Roses to,
When,
to social distortion.
What years would this have been?
Bogarts was probably 19, I don't want to get this wrong, 84, 85 to 89, but it continued because my assistant was a guy named Steve Zapata, and when I left, because I left for other reasons with who I mentioned, Bill Stanky, we ended up doing a record for Atlantic and then a film. So I had left to do that, and he took over Bogarts. So Bogarts continued until I think 92 or 93. You know,
I remember seeing the ads. It's funny because as a teen over in Phoenix, we would get the LA paper on a Sunday, and of course we looked to see who was playing in LA. This is way pre-internet.
Uh-huh.
And Phoenix had a pretty cool scene too, really.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
you actually saw the Bogarts little strip.
Yeah, I remember seeing ads for Bogarts, and I've heard about it. And of course, Fenders, all the bands would play there. And
LA Times really supported us. I mean, if you like Google LA Times, Bogarts or Fenders,
Golden Voice.
Well, Golden Voice came in, after, I did, and I ended up working with Golden Voice for a long time, and learned a lot from Gary Tovar. I mean, he was my mentor. They're still around.
Are they?
Oh yeah, they're doing some big shows.
Well, Santa Monica Civic used to have some of the bigger shows, right?
Yeah, the Olympic Auditorium, Dead Kennedys, and all that. I mean, I think with Golden Voice, we merged and did things together like Sisters of Mercy and
I see.
Johnny Thunders, and so a lot of really great stuff that I couldn't afford to go out of pocket with myself, and so they co-promoted it with me.
I saw this.
So was Golden Voice Fingers.
I saw Stiff Little Fingers out in LA at Variety Arts Center.
Oh, I think that would have been Golden Voice.
Yeah.
Stiff Little Fingers. 999. Remember 999?
Oh, they were fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah.
High Energy Plan.
Yeah.
Biggest
Wire.
Prize in Sport. Yeah.
Who you mentioned. I saw Wire at the Santa Monica Civic.
Did you really? Wow.
I think it was Santa Monica Civic. Yeah.
Well,
great times.
Sorry to bore all the book readers, but Dave and I are real music nerds.
It was inevitable to talk about music.
Yeah. Well, and then briefly, you mentioned the album that you made, and also the film, the Roadside Prophets, which I did not know that you were involved with until very recently.
Yeah, I developed and then got the deal and co-produced it.
Did you write it?
I wrote the initial story, which I didn't get credit for, which really pissed me off. But I was too afraid to write the screenplay because I had written previous screenplays and been rejected, and I was just terrified to write the screenplay. So I had some pocket money, I had some good money and hired Abby Wool, who co-wrote Sid and Nancy.
Sure.
And was involved in Repo Man, I think. And I was too afraid to produce it myself, even though I had a degree. So she put me in touch with Peter McCarthy, who did Repo Man, I'm Gonna Get You Sucker, and a couple other really great films. And then ended up getting a deal at New Line Cinema Fine Line. They ended up loving it, because it starred Adam Horowitz from the Beastie Boys and John Doe from X, and Timothy Leary made an appearance in it because Timothy was a good friend of mine at the time.
Wow.
And Arlo Guthrie was in it. I mean, all these counterculture heroes were in it. Hunter Thompson was supposed to be in it, but New Line Cinema said, no way, we're not having that guy in it. He's too unpredictable.
And so you met all these guys with this spoken word weekly gig or was it a monthly gig or every week?
No, every week, every Wednesday. Wednesday was pretty much a dead night at Bogarts. And so I thought of this idea of having the writer in me to evening of conversation with writers and counterculture heroes, and everyone from John Waters to Jim Carroll, Hunter S. Thompson, Timothy Leary. Then I got this idea to put G. Gordon Liddy with Timothy Leary because G. Gordon Liddy was the one that arrested Timothy Leary or hunted him down. For those who don't know, Timothy Leary was involved in the Harvard LSD thing, and
Yeah.
and like I don't want to say developing LSD, but experimenting with LSD. So was the government. But I mean, Ray Manzarek did poetry with his
Wow.
did he play a Hammond or something? He did some, but he was on his organ. But read, and so there was a lot of poetry, a lot of writers. I'm missing so many people.
Dave Alvin, did you come in and read poetry or?
No, Dave Alvin did solo stuff, and then also X and the Blasters, members, and Dave Alvin from the Blasters, and someone else. They had this band called the Knitters.
Oh, they were great.
Yeah, Exene, and
Yeah.
did them several times, not only at Fenders, but a couple times at Bogart's too. John Doe too solo, but not on the Wednesday evenings. That was because they were more music, so they went on the mainstream nights.
People forget how, and we're going to nerd out for another minute or two. People forget about how diverse that whole musical Los Angeles scene was. I mean, when you have like bills with like Los Lobos and the Blasters, and then Saccharine Trust, and
or the Circle Jerks, and
then
put
the
in there.
Meatmen.
Yeah.
I mean, the diversity of the music was incredible.
Yeah, you could pair up. Like I think the Violent Femmes was, like a band called Pneumonic Devices, who were very sort of goth. I don't want to, because Anne is still a very good friend of mine, and I don't want to piss her off, but they were a little more than goth. And then, like have a band like, you remember Screaming Trees? You could put like Screaming Trees with some Main Street opening up for some, like mainstream type of band, and stuff like that. Yeah, and people, they didn't like spit. Well, yeah, they spit a lot, but they didn't like boot people off the stage and stuff like that.
I read recently, a couple of years ago now, I read Wayne Kramer's memoir, about the MC5.
Oh yeah.
And Detroit during the late 60s. It just sounds like a magical place, I mean,
Yeah.
MC5 and Sun Ra on the same bill and stuff like that.
Yeah, that was actually very I never booked MC5, but like booking reggae, or music like that with punk, they collided, not collided in a bad way. They came together and collided, out, I mean, just like collided out of that's a word. They just, I mean, that became a whole new scene, and a lot of music, came about from that,
Right. Did you know the Bad Religion guys?
Oh yeah. HR and all those guys. I booked Bad Religion several times, and HR.
Yeah.
Oh, that's Bad Brains. HR is Bad Brains. Yeah, but no, Bad Religion several times. Yeah, and Bad Brains several times.
Bad Brains. Yeah.
My favorite DC band.
Oh yeah.
Fugazi.
Okay. Yeah. Who, of course, graduated or came from Minor Threat, right?
Mm-hmm.
Came out of Minor Threat. Were you involved in the DC scene at all?
Only the that I communicated with CBGBs in New York and the 930 Club in Washington, D.C., because a lot of times like Doty, who was the original owner of 930 Club, would have this band like the Pixies that were doing a tour, and they needed more places. They were just starting out, and I mean the album just came out and it was really, really popular. So we'd coordinate stuff with clubs across the country. Not me, but like Doty and CBGBs, and I just say, all I would do is say, yeah, hell yeah, I want them here. I actually had a great time with the Pixies in a hotel room, eating Captain Crunch out of the box and talking all night.
Wow.
They loved Captain Crunch.
See, the writer must use everything. Captain Crunch makes an appearance in this book.
Oh yeah, it does. Yeah, I forgot. Yeah, I grew up on Captain Crunch.
Well, getting back to your career, so in what would it have been, the early 90s, you moved back to DC.
92.
And you become a cop. You
Yeah.
know, did you go to the academy?
Oh yeah, 8 months of that in Quantico. We were 4 weeks in Quantico where the FBI Academy is, and
How old would you have been at this time? I mean, you know, to give me the precise age, but were you in
I
your
was
late
very,
20s?
no, I was in my very early 30s.
Okay.
I joined late, but I got myself in shape. When I knew I was going to be a cop, I spent a year, I quit smoking. I ran, did push-ups and sit-ups. That's all I did. And so I was in better shape than kids, that were in their early 20s in the academy.
And you'd seen a lot more of the world at that point than your peers, I'm sure.
Yeah, some of them, yeah. Some of them were military and had seen a lot of the world too. But
Okay, so you were a cop from what, the mid to early to mid 90s, and then
94
tell us a little
till,
bit about your career as a cop. You started out as a plainclothes, or I'm sorry, as a beat cop.
yeah, uniform, quickly got into plain clothes. And then very quickly got specialized in a form of investigation that I sort of fell into, and it was such a natural thing to do, and became really good at it. And it had to do with narcotics, but finding how to find stolen property through narcotics and stuff like that, through the burglars and stuff like that. And so I got detailed and soon became an investigator and then a detective. And then I was a detective for most of my career in major crimes.
When did you retire?
And I had to retire early, like in 2011, not because of Frank Marr, but because of a life choice. Our daughter was born, and I had degenerative disc disease, so it was very, very difficult, and I did not want to leave. But I ended up getting, a pension and, all that, and my health and, everything, and because I had the time and the age, so I left about 5 years earlier than I could have. But it was fortunate, because it was a good decision, because I was always writing as a cop, but being a cop really honed my skills to a large extent. I mean, as a writer, I'd seen the best and the worst in humanity, and part of what I did was through the Department of Justice. I was involved in interview and interrogation.
Wow.
So I interviewed hundreds of people, and just, nothing that I write about has to do with anybody or any stories, real stories or anything like that, but just the dialogues we had, and the way people talk, and,
Do you start to learn, everybody has different tells, very subtle. Did you start to kind of learn that stuff?
Oh, yeah, quickly. Yeah. I mean, the
there
bowing of the
mentors?
head.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, several mentors. I mean, I wish I could name them, but I had my first detective partner, this Hispanic guy, and then Bobby, he'll know his last name, a lot of mentors,
Well, I mean, those of you who are watching, I did a little research, and David was a very decorated officer, and much respect to you, man.
Thank you.
Yeah, I read a little bit about your career and what you've done. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah, I should mention my best friend Lenny, who was with ATF, and I retired out of that task force with him, high intensity drug trafficking. And we had, there are some stories I wish I could write, that we had together. He was more of an undercover at the time. And those were some of the best years, best times of my career was with him.
And so his name makes its way into the new book, right?
Yeah, of course. He's Lenny. Yeah. He's the Lenny I envisioned as a little boy.
Well, we still have a little bit of time here, because since we haven't really spoken prior to this, I mentioned at the beginning the three remarkable Frank Marr novels. And I remember when, early on, Josh, I was talking to Josh, and this is before the first book came out, which was called The Second Girl, right? Second Girl.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then Crime Song, and then Trigger. Those are the three so far. And I remember Josh telling me about it. He's all, yeah, I've got this amazing DC, cop novel coming, about this cop who's addicted, who's a drug addict. And I said, wow, I want to read that right when you get the, advanced reading copy. Obviously, addiction is a major theme throughout those three books and about this, essential part of this character's story. I don't even know, I don't have a question for him, but I just wanted to kind of open up a discussion about Frank Marr and sort of where he comes from, and, learning a little bit more about your career and what you dealt with specifically with narcotics. Can you talk a little bit about Frank Marr, and was he a composite of some cops you knew, or?
No cops. He was someone I imagined Hunter S. Thompson would be. Hunter became a cop, except that you can understand Frank Marr. What I liked about Frank Marr is he has no, he's very happy with his lifestyle. He is who he is. He doesn't complain. He's not brooding. And he came about because I had written some previous police procedurals that went nowhere and were rejected. And, everyone said, we already have a George Pelicanos, who I love and, was very influenced by. We already have a DC writer, and they were very police procedural. And then my agent at the time just, said, well, just, write something else, and sort of go outside yourself. And I went totally outside myself. I mean, Frank Marr is maybe 10% me. I mean, and in certain areas, certainly not the, the drug area, but so I just went outside of me and wrote something that I wanted to have fun with. And I had absolutely a lot of fun with this, making this sort of unlikable character likable, and how to do that, and so that's how he came about. And then I remember, telling my agent, just please send this to Josh Kendall, because Josh had turned politely, the best rejection letters I ever got, or rejection letter I ever got, was from Josh Kendall. And it was for A Detailed Man. And I said, send it to him first. And fortunately, he jumped on it. And we met at BoucherCon in Long Beach and had drinks at one of Social Distortions. I don't know which one. I think the guitar player or the drummer. They had a club right on Pine Street. Did you go to Dallas? Not Dallas, Long Beach.
No, I didn't.
Well, we met in a bar there, an Irish pub, and there was an Irish punk band playing in the background. We're talking, we're all music geeks, all three of us, and
sure,
you and me and John. I think that's why we get along so much. And so we talked about the book, and and how much he loved it. And I was just like, I don't believe this is happening, And then the rest is Mulholland history for me. I mean, becoming a part of the Mulholland family is, with Little Brown, is just phenomenal.
Yeah, I really admire what they do. Josh and that publisher they take a lot of risks, I think, which is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just the same old stuff.
Yeah. Have you read Ames's new book, A Man Named Doll?
No, and you're not the first. I mean, Ben Winters was just telling me and how killer it was.
Yeah, Ben and Joe Ide. Ide. And we're good friends, and I still mess up his name on purpose. No, we went on this tour together, and Ben's great. Yeah, very supportive, and really good guy. It's a good book, A Man Named Doll.
Yeah, I need to read it. I have a copy of it. I just haven't had a chance yet.
Yeah, it's just a small, quick read.
Yeah, Ben Winters. He's one of those guys. It's like you can tell he's got like 50 IQ points ahead of you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's one of these really brilliant guys.
Yeah.
A lot of fun to talk with him.
Yeah, we were in San Francisco together in a Uber or a cab. I don't remember where, being driven somewhere. We just got in conversations. I just couldn't. He was way ahead of me. You know, I couldn't keep up with him.
Yeah, yeah,
You know, but yeah,
yeah,
he's a great guy.
yeah. You mentioned Pelicanos, who I've been a big champion of George's for a long, long time, and he's one of these guys. Everybody associates him with DC, and you know, appropriately, and those books were so important to so many. I describe him as a writer's writer.
Mhm.
You ask writers who they like to read, and George is always on the list.
Yeah,
And I think it's criminal that he isn't better known in the wider
yeah,
literature.
I agree. Yeah, he got known for The Wire.
Well,
Well,
that's true.
he didn't create The Wire. I mean,
That's true.
but he was part of it with Dave Simon,
Yeah, David Simon, right.
David Simon.
Yep.
The Marr books got compared a lot to The Wire, which was like incredible for me. But yeah, George was one of those guys for me too. I had met him on the department. I met him when I was a working cop, and he was doing a ride around with homicide, and I was in intelligence section, and they all dropped by, and or at Joe Gentile, who was the PIO, information officer, and I had met George. I remember telling him I want to be a writer, and he would say, "Keep doing it, just keep pursuing it." And, I mean, he was very positive, and and then he supported the second girl, on social media, and
Mm,
you know, yeah.
yeah.
But he's a very important figure, and yeah, I think he should be just as well known as
The
and he
Richard,
is.
there's the Richard Prices of the world, and
Oh my gosh, Richard Price, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I mean, you read those books that George wrote, chronicling, like Hard Revolution in the
Hmm.
late '60s, and then
Soul Circus. Oh, well, even later, Soul Circus. Not later than the '60s, but after that, Soul Circus,
Full
Hell to
Circle,
Pay. All these incredible
King,
books.
King Suckerman. I think his heart is in like 1972 or something.
Yeah,
That's the soul music of that era.
yeah, yeah.
Well,
That's The Deuce on HBO.
yes, yes,
Yeah,
great.
he was involved in that. Yeah.
Have you seen any of DC Noir, the TV? I have not yet.
The book DC Noir.
Well, have you seen they've made a TV series based on the
No,
stories of George Pelicanos?
that he edited DC Noir, or
Oh,
because there's a book called DC Noir.
there is. Yeah, it's part of the Akashic series.
Oh yeah, okay. No, I have not seen that at all.
There's
What is it on?
I don't know. I saw an ad for it, but that's what they're calling the TV series, DC Noir. And then it said based on the shorts, maybe the stories of George Pelicanos.
Oh damn, I've got to see that.
Uh, yeah, I haven't seen it, but it looks great.
Yeah.
Have you had any TV nibbles or bites?
On this one, not so far, but several on the second girl in the other books, and
I'll
I
bet.
don't know where it is. I pretty much stay out of that, but there were some big bites, and I don't know whatever happened. I know that they'd be difficult to make because of the subject matter, but then you have, you have all these, shows that are difficult to get made,
Yeah,
you
like
know.
True Detective. I could see Frank Marr, uh, being in a well-produced
Yeah,
series. Yeah,
yeah, it'll happen. And, sometimes, I mean, some stuff gets made, years later,
yeah.
and I'm confident. So are my radio, my TV film people. They're confident.
Well, what are you working on now? Have you started anything new?
Yeah, it's still in the note taking, and I don't outline, but I take tons and tons of notes and a thought process. But it's going to take place in 19. Here we go. In 1987, it's going to involve a nightclub that promotes punk and alternative music. But then there's going to be a certain girl that something happens to, and the doorman is an ex-cop who just quits because he can't stand being a cop, and becomes a doorman there. And so of course they find out that this guy used to be a cop, and the cops really aren't helping much with this case, so they asked for him. And so I'm going to go back more to my roots, you know, like the roots. I mean, I've only written 4, 5 books, but you know, more the police PI type, you know, thing, because I like to break rules, you know, with respect to, I don't want to follow strict procedure anymore, but I want to follow someone who is a cop at heart. You know, that's important to me, because I don't want to piss off any of my cop friends, you know.
Now, is it going to be a LA book then?
No, I'm sorry, Long Beach.
Oh, Long Beach. Okay, great.
Yeah, yeah. It's the scene I know best.
Yeah.
I know Washington, D.C. pretty good, but the punk alternative scene, I really don't know that well. So I don't want to get caught up in tons of research and stuff like that, which I could do, you know, but I'm not that good at it.
Yeah. Well, that sounds fantastic. Do you have a title?
Tentatively titled Sugar.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
I like it. That sounds great.
Yeah.
What have you been reading lately? Are you
I haven't been reading much, but again, one that really sticks out is Brian Gaddis's The System, because he nailed it. And then of course Jonathan Ames. You know, I haven't read Ben Winter's new book yet. I want to read that. But I'm falling back like to a lot of, you know, like books I've had in paperback that I haven't, like Simenon and, you know, stuff like that I haven't finished. And, you know, and I'm a Graham Greene fan. That's how Graham got his name. So I'm rereading like The Power and the Glory, because it's so dark and beautiful. And
actually, I forgot to mention that, because I distinctly sense a Graham Greene flavor in this book.
are you serious? That's such a compliment. Thank
Yeah.
you. I never would have dreamed that.
Yeah.
Because he was so brilliant. But he's a man who wrote based on his experiences, you know.
Yeah.
A lot of this stuff. Yeah, totally.
Did you ever read that wild book that he wrote called The Ministry of Fear?
Actually, no.
It's the book. It's based upon, set during the Blitz, you know, which Greene, of course, lived through.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, it's a great book, and it's kind of surrealistic in a way too. Ministry of Fear.
That's a lot like, you know, I mean, you know, G.K. Chesterton, you know, and like a lot of his very surreal books, A Man Called Thursday.
Right.
Or A Man Named Thursday, or something like that. Or They Call Me Thursday, I don't remember, but it's so surreal. But it's hard to get into, but once you get into it, you know, you can't stop, you know. I read a lot of Chesterton, and I'm actually, he's on my list too. I picked up at Mysterious Bookshop. I picked up would have picked it up from you if I was there. Is his autobiography, you know. So
really?
I had read the one that he had written about Dickens, and you know, he wrote this great biography about Dickens that just really, you know, I go back to. There's so many older books I go back to for inspiration. You know, I mean, that's the one advice I can give any aspiring writer, is just freaking read. Go to Poison Pen, just buy books, you know, just get books and read, because you don't know who's going to influence you, and they will.
It's funny, we had one of the most interesting programs that I was fortunate enough to do was with this British scholar, a guy named John Mullen, who has a new book out called The Artful Dickens. And it's a study of Dickens, and you know, a series of essays about Dickens.
Right,
I really want to go back and read some Dickens.
I'm going to actually write that down. The Artful Dickens. Yeah.
Yeah. If you're truly bored, there's a recording of our conversation somewhere. I can send it to you. And he was just fantastic. You know, and what he was talking about was that, you know, Dickens was poo-pooed by a lot of the critics for a long time because he was so popular. And then he takes a look at a lot of the templates and a lot of the very modern experimental things, you know, the Dickens just flat out invented, you know,
Hmm.
and how a lot of those books, you know, of course, we all know they were written serially,
Hmm.
and that he took all kinds of wild risks and stylistic chances, and just what an innovator he was.
Yeah.
I think you would dig the book.
Yeah. I'm going to pick that up.
I actually have a question. Sharon asks, she says, can David speak to his writing process? Yeah, let's have some writerly questions.
It's changed since COVID. It used to be so simple because I would write during that time when my wife would take our daughter to school in the morning, and then I would start writing at 10 until I had to pick her up at like 2:30. And so that would be the time I would write. So first of all, I always had a time, and I have a time now. In second place, I have a location. I never veer from my location in my recliner. I mean, I have a desk, you know, I have all that stuff, but I don't use a desk. I get my recliner with a laptop on my lap. And the most important thing for me, and I think something I learned from another writer, I can't remember who, maybe Walter Mosley or someone, I don't remember, but just sit there and open your laptop or however you write, you know, if you just write by hand, just look at the page, you know, look at the, you know, and even if nothing comes, just sit there during that time and don't move, you know. And then for me, it's like I have to break a threshold, and for me it's like 10, 15,000 words, and once I break that threshold, it starts to write itself. But I'm not an outline guy, I'm not any of that. I just and during that time you're there, just think about what it is that's in your head that you want to write. That, I mean, whether you have it outlined already, you have the story already, and just sit there until it happens. And then once it starts happening, it just doesn't stop. So that's basically my process.
Did it take you a long time, you know, when you were starting to write seriously, before you really felt like, hey, this is my voice now? You know, I think a lot of writers start out by imitating, of course, their heroes. And did you get to that point where you thought, okay, I've found my voice?
Yeah, and the second girl, yeah. Um, you know, that's why I like, you know, first person, is because I can get into the head of the character and it sort of doesn't become me. I mean, of course it's me, and you know, you know, it has my voice, but my style and all that, you know, I would imitate, you know, writers, not plagiarize them, but I would try to be like them. I mean, I think everyone does that. But I think with the second girl, I found my particular voice with that whole trilogy. And then it, you know, with City on the Edge, you know, you know, I had that style that which is my voice, my style.
Yeah, quite a bit different than anything you've done before.
Yeah.
Real departure. But for everybody watching, again, the book we've been meandering around and talking about part of the time. And thanks for dealing with my digressions and musical stuff. But it's a wonderful new book called City on the Edge, David Swinson. And as I said at the beginning of the hour, he's signed a batch of them, and I don't have that many of them left. So if you'd like a signed copy, just give me an email. You know how to get in touch with us. I was going to put the link in the comments field, but I just can't seem to do that while I'm talking. So poisonpen.com, you can find it.
Yeah, please support the bookstores, support Poison Pen.
Yeah,
very important.
Thanks so much, David. And it's been a real treat to visit with you.
Yeah.
We should get together and just do like a podcast about music.
Oh, that'd be cool.
That would be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, what we're listening to now. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
But anyway, thanks everybody for watching. And David, great to see you. And have
Good to see you.
Have a great rest of your night, and best of luck with the book.